I put on my old man shaking fist hat and I yell at Sony Pictures to get off my lawn. Tonight on The Sunday Show.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Sunday Show. The Sunday Show is where I sit and yell at the internet for 20 minutes or so about things that have been rattling around inside my brain over the course of the last week. Of course, I answer some of your questions, and this week I asked the question, where was I? 6 days ago, Sony Pictures announced that it had acquired Andy Muschietti, director of It and Mama, to helm the live-action Robotech project. And all of a sudden, the idea that Robotech was being made into a live-action movie became like a thing inside my brain again. The last time that there was any movement was the idea that James Wan was going to direct this movie. Now, what is Robotech? For people my age, Robotech might have very well been the first time that Americans had an opportunity to watch a drama-driven Japanese animated series. There were plenty of Japanese cartoons that were available to watch in America, but they weren't set on a 24, 27 episode story arc the way that Robotech was. Robotech is Harmony Gold's spin on the Japanese anime called Macross. And Macross is its own universe, okay? Macross kind of has a multiverse to it. And in Japan, Macross spun off into other Macross Plus, Macross Zero, Macross Frontier, Macross Delta, and it's its own intellectual universe of characters. And then Robotech was Harmony Gold buying just the Macross saga and bringing it to the United States, changing some of the plot and changing some of the mechanics, keeping most of the major characters and most of the major storyline. But what ended up happening was, in order to make it a longer production, Harmony Gold bought two other transforming mecha cartoons, Super Dimension Cavalry Southern Cross, and then Genesis Climber Mos Pieta, and then it turned it into this three-story arc narrative about humans discovering that they're not alone in the universe, developing robo-technology, giant robots to fight off other giant robots or giant invaders, and so it's taking three different titles and then blending it together into a more seamless story. And so for me, it wouldn't be until college that I learned that Macross was its own thing, and I started watching Macross and Macross 7 and all of that stuff. But as a child, oh my goodness, here's why I want to talk about Robotech and its live action, and especially Sony. Here's what I want to talk about today. Robotech is important to me, and a lot of people my age. Robotech, first and foremost, go online and do an internet search for recent Robotech movie developments. And you're going to read articles from people writing for Forbes and Variety and all that stuff. And the common description of Robotech is giant armored robots battling against aliens. That's true. That's true. But that's not what Macross is, and that's not what Robotech is, and that's not what hooked me onto Robotech when I watched it in grade school back in the 80s. Robotech taught me that animation could tell adult stories. Here are the things that are in Robotech, Macross, that I didn't see in cartoons in America when I was growing up in the 1980s. I learned that animated shows could have a unified story arc, where if I missed a week, I missed a significant chunk of the story. Robotech was a show I had to watch because I didn't want to miss whatever was going to happen next. I'm going to tell you about why that's important in a moment. Robotech taught me that frontline characters are not immune to death. Characters die. And that's important, and I'll explain why that's important in a moment. And Robotech taught me that cartoons didn't just revolve around action-adventure. There is a love story in Robotech. And not just a love story, but a love triangle. It's not just a boy meets girl, boy gets girl. There is a genuine triangle that develops, crescendos, and resolves over the course of the series. Now, the fact that I wanted to watch the show, and the fact that characters dying bothered me, and the fact that I remember this cartoon as a love triangle, tells you what Robotech actually is. Robotech is a drama. It's a soap opera that takes place in a future period where it's almost like the MacGuffin is the alien technology and the alien invasion. The alien technology and invasion means that people get to fly fighter planes that turn into giant robots, and shooting happens and there are explosions, and that's great. And that keeps a 12-year-old interested from that action-adventure standpoint. But here's where Robotech is more important. Robotech is character-driven. I don't remember the names of any of the characters in Mask. I hardly remember any of the names of any of the characters besides Duke, Scarlet, Cobra Commander, Destro, but I don't remember more than a half dozen G.I. Joe characters. I definitely don't remember. I watched a lot of bad 80s action cartoons. I don't remember even the titles. I can see cartoons that I watched. I just don't remember, I watched a cartoon where guys are cowboys and they ride robot horses in space. I'd have to go to the internet right now to look up the Outlaws in Space cartoon. There are some cartoons that stuck. And the cartoons that stuck follow the same formula. Number one, they're character-driven. I remember Thundercats. I remember the characters, and I remember when they actually had the creative decision-making that actually finally the ancient spirits of evil punished Mumra for all of his ongoing failures. That was an episode that basically acknowledged the existence of previous episodes. Whereas if you watched an episode of G.I. Joe, or you watched an episode of Transformers, you didn't have to watch any other episodes to feel like you didn't miss out on anything. But if you missed an episode of Robotech, or some of the other Japanese animation that came across in the mid-80s, like Battleship Yamato came over as Star Blazers. If you missed an episode of Star Blazers, or you missed an episode of Robotech, you are out of luck on whatever happened in the previous episode. So now let's marry 1 and 2. The fact that we have a continuous story arc, and then that we have characters who die, frontline characters who die. When I was a child watching cartoons growing up in the 80s, characters didn't die. They just didn't. I mean, I watched years of G.I. Joe, and G.I. Joe and Cobra expended millions of rounds of ammunition, and no one died. I watched seasons of A-Team, and the A-Team shot tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition, and no one died. One guy died in the original A-Team run, and that guy died off camera. So, characters don't die, but yet in Macross, in Robotech, several important supporting characters will die. And for an 11-year-old, that was no, you can't. That's breaking the code. That's breaking a social contract that we have with the program. You can't kill these characters. I don't want them to die. So we have, the story arc, and then we have the deaths, and then there's this love triangle. what's crazy is that I was very much interested in finding out how this relationship was going to resolve itself. The show treated me like an adult, and it presented me with adult scenarios and situations. It didn't dumb things down and play things down to a lowest common denominator. So, at the end of the day, Robotech is a soap opera, and a soap opera that's in the format that will draw kids in. But if you're an adult with an open mind for I'll say the overarching framework of the animated series, because again, it is a science fiction in the future. I guess in a reality, the apocalypse is happening in a way. It's very apocalyptic story, and an adult can watch it too and recognize in the series adult situations and circumstances, which maybe you weren't prepared for a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old to also enjoy, grasp, and then look forward to. And here's where I pivot to talk about Sony and the live-action movie. As I said before, when you Google Robotech and live-action movie, the descriptions are all talking about giant robots fighting aliens. And if that's all that Robotech is going to be, then the project is dead before it gets to the screen, and Sony shouldn't even do it. It just won't. Sony will piss off, and Sony has a great track record of doing this. Sony will piss off the fan base. I'll tell you this right now, there is one thing that spells, I don't know if it spells disaster, but I definitely think that this is one of the signs that you should look for to determine whether or not Sony is going to get Robotech right. What you need to be watching for is whether or not Sony brings on to help with the project Shoji Kawamori. Who is Shoji Kawamori? He is the division behind the creative, he's the vision behind the mecha. He is the designer who put together what Macross and Robotech look like. It's the way that the mecha work is elegant and functional and easily recreatable in toys. There are multiple toys that were out there, the Valkyrie fighters or the Veritech fighters, it all depends on whether or not you want to talk about Macross or Robotech, but his animated designs worked on an engineering level to where it could be easily replicatable in toys and in models. Plus, just the way that they look. They look awesome. The Invid, the Robotech, not the Invid, I'm sorry. the Zentrani, their battle pods, their mecha, the UN Spacey and the Battloids and all that stuff. It all looks good and it all works. And he is like the vision behind Macross, behind Robotech, visually why the series works. If you're not going to bring any of the original design team or idea people on board, then you basically have interlopers and fans putting together Robotech. This will just be a really expensive fan film, but it won't have Macross's heart. Let's take a look at the names of the directors that were attached to this before. We had James Wan and Andy Muschietti. These are two individuals who are not, I just don't buy into these directors as the directors who are going to put forth a space drama. I don't see them doing it. The movies that they put out sound like they do a great job of putting robots and aliens in space and making it actiony or whatever. But I don't necessarily feel like we can put together. This feels like Rogue One. This feels like Han Solo. It feels like a big studio looking for the hot new director and not the right director. We're looking for somebody who has right now appeal rather than right skill. And I don't know who the right director is for this. It needs to be a director who understands how to put big objects in motion. And in a way, like going back to Rogue One, Gareth Edwards. He was a great pick. He has a great eye for putting large things on screen and making you believe that they're there. All right? The exterior shots of the Death Star being finally assembled, and the Star Destroyers, and the walkers, and everything like that. That all looked just fantastic. It was great. But Robotech can't be that movie. Robotech has to be a love triangle set in the future, kind of because no matter what sort of external stress that we're facing as people, whether it's the day-to-day rigors of your job, or whether it's a family trying to stay together while dad is on his 4th deployment to Iraq, or whether aliens are invading, yes, Independence Day is a kick-butt movie. But, admit it, the parts you remember are the human parts. Humans overcoming adversity. The president rallying his troops for one last fight. Will Smith fighting for his family. Those are the things that make... It's not the aliens and it's not the fight scenes. It's those human moments where we connect with the characters and we care about the characters. And Robotech has a huge catalog of connectable characters that we're risking ignoring if we're going to try and cramp. If we're basically going to make Pacific Rim, only it looks different. I mean, Pacific Rim taught us that people are up to the idea of giant robots fighting giant aliens. All right? But the story is loose there at best. Robotech can't be Pacific Rim 3. It just can't. Robotech has to be Robotech, and that means you start with the characters. It means you start with the story. It means that we care about who these people are. Remember, go back to the prequels. We didn't care about the Clone Wars because we didn't care about who was fighting because they were two disposable armies. No one cared that we were sending thousands of clones off to die because they didn't have wives and kids back home. So the movie had no... The battles had no stakes. In Robotech, if we know the characters and we care about the characters, then the battles have stakes. Then the robot battles against the aliens can work. But if it's just there because we want to make it look like a video game, or if it's just there because we want to have action for action's sake, then we have an action flick with no heart. And Robotech can't be that. It is, at its core, a love triangle where young people are coming to grips with what it is to be an adult and how can we live a normal life when the world has been turned upside down. Robotech needs to be 3 movies. You can't shove Robotech Masters and Invid and Macross into 3 movies. Robotech itself, the Macross saga, has to be 3 movies. The first movie, we establish our characters, we establish the premise, we see the development of robotechnology. The climax of the movie is the arrival of the Zentrani. And the first fold, when the fold drive messes up and they end up out by Pluto. The second movie is the migrant phase of the SDF-1. They come back to Earth, but nobody will take them. The crew are at their lowest because the Earth defense thinks they understand how they're going to deal with the Zentrani. And the crew are trying to convince them that they're wrong. And we have our other low points because the second movie is where we lose our mainline characters that we lose. But we also learn about the Zentrani. This would be the time to have, Lisa and Rick and Max on the cruiser and meeting Exeter. And then the third movie is the conversion of the Zentrani battling each other, the final climactic like maybe the second movie ends with the destruction of the Earth. That would actually be a really cool place to end to. 3 is the final climactic battle. We deal with the Zentronian and we set the stage for moving forward. We don't necessarily have to have the reconstruction part of Macross, where we see the rebuilding and the creation of Macross City and Chiron coming back and things like that. I don't think we necessarily need that. I think we can put the resolution of the love triangle at the end of that part. We don't need the rest of it, although it might be interesting to do that. I just think that you have a complete story arc from arrival of Zor's battle fortress through to the successful defeat of the Zentrani main fleet, and it's an opening for a new civilization on Earth. Then we can do 3 movies down the road if we want to do Robotech Masters, and then we could have 3 movies down the road if we want to do Invid, and we could make 9 movies out of it. But it can't. But movies 2 and 3, Robotech's too big for one movie. Okay, they're going to want to do Robotech over multiple movies. But Robotech isn't going to go anywhere if we don't care about the characters, and I cite Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four demonstrated that if you didn't do the story and the characters right, nobody cares about the second movie. And nobody cares about Fantastic Four if we want to do it with the kids. Everybody's screaming, had been screaming for years for Incredibles 2. Because we know the characters and we care about them. But a second movie, like, again, let's go back to the prequels. I don't care about Anakin. I don't. And it's not Hayden Christensen's fault. He's a fine actor, whatever. But what he was given was garbage. And why should I care about garbage? And the same thing's going to happen with Robotech. If Sony is going to just find the hot new director who may or may not have a vested interest, a long time ago, Warner Brothers had Robotech. And Tobey Maguire was like championing that. And Tobey Maguire was on the internet just trying to convince the fandom, look, I know Robotech, I watch Robotech, I want to do Rick Hunter right, I want to do Robotech right. I don't hear anybody, and I haven't gone 8 miles deep into the internet looking for research, I just don't hear anybody saying they want to do Robotech right. No one talks about Rick Hunter, no one talks about Lisa Hayes, everyone talks about aliens and giant armored robots. And if that's all that Sony's going to produce, then Sony is going to be like on so many people's garbage lists. I don't know. I mean, I do know, this is my fear. My fear is that we're going to get Pacific Rim 3 Macross style. And that'll be that. Here's my real fear. My real fear is, it'll make enough money, it'll go down the Transformers road. It'll make enough money here and a lot of money abroad to just let the crappy snowball just continue to build and gain momentum. And then I'll sit at home and weep at what might have been. So, I know nobody at Sony is listening to me. But if Sony were to listen to me, please find people who care about Robotech. Let them put it together. And the people who don't care about Robotech, I don't care where they are on the organization chart. Just let them mess something else up. Let them leave the people who care about Robotech alone and put together a space drama. And the proof is in the pudding. People my age who watched Robotech generally love Robotech, and a big part of that is we care about the characters. If 12-year-olds back in the 1980s buy into that, 12-year-olds in the 2000s are going to buy into that as well. They really are. Roll the dice. It's a safe gamble, but take the gamble. Make Robotech worth caring about. Make Robotech about the characters, not the robots fighting aliens. Alright, time for the Q&A portion of the show. Don't have a lot of questions this week, and that's actually probably a pretty good thing because the Robotech was probably a bit of a rant. Anyway, let's get to question number 1. Question number 1, it's hair related, what a surprise. Anna asks, Yo Curry, What do you do for such luscious locks? What's your hair routine? Well, here's the secret to my hair routine. I do nothing. I do absolutely nothing. It's a matter of, I think the only thing that I do that I'm conscious about my hair is just probably I use the recommended amount of shampoo and I just like work it around my scalp. I don't do a giant glob of shampoo and everything through my hair. Just a small quarter's worth in the hand, and I work it just around the scalp, and then I just leave it at that. And I try my best not to, like overly shampoo all of my hair all of the time. I remember somebody telling me a long time ago, shampoo the scalp, condition the hair. I don't condition the hair, that's just an extra step. I just want to get into the shower and get out. But that's really just about it. I don't put anything on it, I don't put anything in it, I don't put anything near it, there's no heat, there are no chemicals. Any of the color variation in here, there are dark bits in here, and there are blonde bits in here, and there are red bits in there. That's all just because I'm a mutt. I'm just a Northern European, Irish, English mutt. So my hair reflects my hair reflects the scrambled nature of my genes. But that's just really about it. There's nothing to it, really, except I just leave it alone. I bother it as little as possible. I say nice things to it. I read it stories and, feed it human blood. Staying on the subject of my hair, Dan asks, what will it take to get your ponytail hanging up behind my desk in my classroom? You know what? I tried to fundraise to have my hair cut off last year and nobody put the money in. Everyone wants to see my hair connected to my head. I really thought that if we said, hey, if we raise this much money, I'll cut my hair at an assembly. I thought that would have been the event of the century. But no, nobody wanted to. No, there were people who said, Curry, if we did a fundraiser to keep your hair, a counter fundraiser. And I was like, don't worry about it. Nobody's putting money in the jar. So, yeah, I think I think the answer to the question is, actively the answer will be 0. Because I'm going to flip this fundraiser next year. I'm going to flip it on its head. I'm going to hold the hair hostage. If people want to see the hair connected to the head, when I do the fundraiser in the building next year, it's going to be, if we don't raise this much money, the hair is going to go. So the answer, Dan, is 0. How much is it going to cost you? It's going to cost you 0. And if everybody else puts in 0, and then you can have your way. You can have the I don't think you get the ponytail though, because if I do manage to get it cut this year, I'll still be able to donate it. There are not a lot of gray hairs hiding in here, but I'm starting to see a few. I'm getting some racing stripes on the sides, which is actually where I wanted the gray to come in. I want the venerable racing. Look, I'm graying around the ears. That means I'm collegiate and smart. Right? So I only have a few more years left to donate this before my age overtakes my pigmentation. Anyway, the answer is 0. Do nothing. Everybody just do nothing next year and their hair will be gone. Last question, and this is a doozy, and one that when I answered it the first time, it took me 18 minutes to answer. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make this next week's A block portion of the program. But I am going to address the question now because Morgan did ask it. And Morgan asks, let's talk tax code. What is your idea of a fair, equitable tax code? And that's actually a really important question. And I think that the really important question that sits underneath it is about economics and money. And I have just, my brain is exploding with rants against economic systems. And I may say that for next week. But I want to give a quick answer to this. And I think the answer is, because tax codes are written by men, they can be unwritten by men as well. And you could sit down and try to write a fair and equitable tax code, but at some point a future legislator, a future non-governmental organization, a lobbyists will come in, and whatever tax code you put in place can be broken. A hole can be carved in it. The whole system can be unmade. We could find, it could turn out that a straight graduated system would be the most fair, but as long as it's made by man, it won't stay fair and equitable for long. And wow, there's no accountability for bad legislation. Right? The people who write the laws very rarely are the recipients of the negative effects. I could write a bad law that only, right, men writing healthcare laws targeted at women. The men aren't going to feel the negative repercussions of that legislation. And then so the same is going to be true for the tax code. A good tax code that might benefit me isn't going to last very long because the people who are in control, the people who have the power, the people who have the money are going to undo that legislation. So really, and like I said, I think I'm going to make this the A block for next week. I think the better question that we as a culture should ask is, why? Why are we doing things the way that we're doing them now? Is there a better way? Can we craft something that removes taxation altogether because we as a culture are ready to level up and move away from certain things that we have become accustomed to having now in our lives? Like I said, it's a big question that you ask, and I know I haven't really answered it because I think my answer is you can't. You can't put a fair tax code into place and expect it to last for very long. It will be savaged, ripped apart, amended, riders placed on the legislation that basically undo any of the good that tax code could have tried to have achieved in the first place. Sorry, that's a really negative view, but that's having watched politics and legislators work now for, since I've been in high school and aware of state and national politics. I've kind of got a very cynical view of how the system works and a deep belief that we have to do a very major paradigm shift when it comes to how we handle life, society, and culture in this country. If we went down the path that I would advocate, we would never need taxation again. And I think that's the fairest, most equitable system, living in a world where taxation isn't necessary. Anyway, more on that next week. But that was a great question, thanks. The last part of the program today is the Where Was I portion of the program. Every once in a while I walk through life and have to ask myself, where was I? Last year I was blissfully watching one of my favorite television programs on TV. It's on PBS. It's called America's Test Kitchen. And I've been watching that show for 15 years. But last year when I was watching ATK, I was unaware that there was trouble in paradise. I didn't recognize anything that was wrong until last fall, when I turned on a new season of ATK and there was no Christopher Kimball. None. That cantankerous bow tie wearing guy with his funny suits and his Vermont sensibilities. He wasn't on the show, and I was like, wait, did someone die? Did I miss the very special episode of America's Test Kitchen when we think back fondly on Christopher Kimball? So I asked the internet what was going on, and it turned out that in May of 2016, or thereabouts, they had officially split, and that Christopher Kimball was starting something called Milk Street. Where was I? Now, there's a lawsuit involved, and there's a new program involved, and there's bad blood involved, and if you look at a copy of Milk Street magazine, you look at a copy of Cook's Illustrated magazine, there's a lot of similarities and bad blood about losing. Like ATK lost WGBH, so they have to go through another affiliate to get their program produced, and so all of the behind-the-scenes shenanigans is fun reading, but what really caught me off guard is how different the program is without Christopher Kimball on. And I guess that this part of the program is more about how the show has evolved over this season, I think in some pretty good ways. When the first episode came out, I felt that Bridget and Julie were laying on the "we're buddy cooks" way too hard. And it was very uncomfortable, painful, distracting to watch them being all like, we're girlfriends sort of things. And I felt like if we were going to have like, I think ATK runs like 24 episodes a season, or 27. If we're going to have 27 episodes of that, it was going to be really hard to watch. And to their credit, I think that they've recognized that, because the show has moved a little bit away from that. They're still clearly enjoying working together, but it doesn't feel forced anymore. It feels a little bit more genuine, like they've hit their stride and they understand what it is that their show needs to look like. Another thing I like about the show is how much I'm enjoying the segments outside of cooking. Like if we're going to go into the tasting segment with Jack Bishop, I'm finding that like in the past, Chris had always been like, well, you guys got it wrong because I thought this was better. And it's like, the segment is about making a recommendation about a particular product based off of professional tasters. And I'm kind of going to go roll with them probably more than listen to you say that maybe you were right and they were wrong. And I always found myself having that internal dialogue argument with Chris. But in the case of ATK now, you know, Bridget or Julie, whoever is in there, they seem to be much more willing to accept and dialogue with Jack how the products actually fare out. And the same is true with in the equipment corner, where we're talking with Adam about like whatever it is that we're talking about. There seems to be much more of a we're all on the same page, presenting the information that you need to make a good decision, rather than quipping and quarreling about do I need this or do I need that. So what's really interesting is that I have found myself enjoying the program just as much, maybe even more. And it's really weird because I didn't know this was going to happen. Because I live my life pretty blissfully and peacefully without, you know, having to scour the internet for every little thing that pops up. I guess the real big question is if I'm going to be watching Milk Street, because that's going to come out in the fall of 2017. They're going to be directly competing with ATK, and it's going to be interesting to see to what extent Milk Street is just ATK, but like different recipes, or if Kimball has it within him to craft something that's different. Where was I when the founding member of the band broke away to do a solo act? In this case, it's cooking shows, which I wasn't expecting to happen. But hey, you know, life's funny that way. Alright everybody, that's the Sunday show. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave comments down in the comments section below. And if you've got a question that you want me to answer, put it down there too. I try to read all the comments. It's really not that hard. I don't get that many comments. And right now they're mostly from spam bots. So humans, carbon-based life forms, take a moment. Ask me a question down in the comments below. I just may answer it in a very curry way next week. And as always, may Yoda rise your X-Wing up to meet you. May the dark side be forever at your back. May your sabers shine warm upon your face. The Imperial walkers fall soft on your battlefield. And until we meet again, may the Force be with you always. Take care. Bye.